What is it going to take? What is it going to take for this country to wake up and realize that we have gun violence abound? It's almost like it's the total destruction of society, and nobody wants to do anything about it. Can't have background checks, can't register guns, can't do anything. It's just, they want us all armed, I guess. It's a familiar American story, and the rest of the world is looking at us saying, you know, they just can't get it together, can they? 14 people dead, 17 injured, another shooting at the Inland Regional Social Services Center in San Bernardino, California. Social services. We don't know the motive. We know that the attack was well planned, well coordinated, and the perpetrators were well armed. And there are people who are deceased that were involved in the attack. This is the San Bernardino, California Police Chief Jared Bergwan talking about how they were well armed when they showed up.
Preliminary information indicates that these are people that came prepared, that they were dressed and equipped in a way to indicate that they were prepared, and they were armed with long guns, not handguns. So I do not know what type of long guns. Rifles? I don't know.
Have any of those weapons been recovered here at the scene?
We do not have any weapons recovered at this point.
This has become a habit in this country. It's almost daily news. The president is sick of it. He addressed in an interview with CBS on Wednesday afternoon what we have to do about mass shootings in this country.
The one thing we do know is that we have a pattern now of mass shootings in this country that has no parallel anywhere else in the world. And there's some steps we could take, not to eliminate every one of these mass shootings, but to improve the odds that they don't happen as frequently. Common sense gun safety laws, stronger background checks.
And the president also addressed what has been a big conversation in this country about everybody so concerned about terrorism, but nobody wants to do anything about firearms.
And, for those who are concerned about terrorism, some may be aware of the fact that we have a no-fly list where people can't get on planes, but those same people who we don't allow to fly could go into a store right now in the United States and buy a firearm, and there's nothing that we can do to stop them. That's a law that needs to be changed.
Joining us now is Robert Greenwald of Brave New Films, who has done a lot of work on gun violence in this country with his organization. Robert, good to have you with us.
Thanks, Ed. It's good to be with you on this another tragic, horrible day. By the way, this is the 355th mass shooting this year, so it's more than one a day.
355 shootings to date in this country. And yet we just don't have the political will to do anything about it, Robert, do we?
Well, we haven't had the political will to take on the NRA and the gun companies, and the NRA is a lobbying force for the gun companies who so far have been obscenely committed to doing anything and everything to stop gun laws that would be common sense and practical and that most of the country is in favor of. But we're working on a campaign at Brave New Films. There's going to be a full-length documentary. There's going to be we've done a bunch of shorts. There are going to be more coming. I mean, we did a short video, Ed. In Florida, pediatricians are not allowed to ask their patients questions about are there guns at home. I mean, it's stuff that you wouldn't believe would happen. But I think that, or I believe, or I hope, as the tragedies, which are so horrible, increase, people are more and more concerned about their safety, and it becomes a question, wait a minute, is it my safety and my family's safety at church or at school? Isn't that worth something?
It has to be worth something. And the mindset of Americans is certainly turning because of what we're going through and the horrid number that you had put out. This is the president, cut 5 if we can, talking about how the Congress has got to do something to curb this.
But what we do know is that there are steps we can take to make Americans safer, and that we should come together in a bipartisan basis at every level of government to make these rare as opposed to normal. We should never think that this is something that just happens in the ordinary course of events, because it doesn't happen with the same frequency in other countries.
We just do not have lawmakers in this country in enough number to make a legislative decision for the positive to do something about this problem in this country. That's really what it boils down to, because the lobbying arm of the organizations that you've mentioned, Mr. Greenwald, clearly are so strong they can run people out of a job.
Well, they have been. Again, some of it is turning. It's awful and it's slow, but what a lot of the gun organizations that are working on this and people who care about it, what they've been doing, they've been focusing on the state level, Ed. So there have been a series of legislative victories, of ballot initiatives, of laws getting passed in a bunch of states, and I think that will continue. Now, there also absolutely has to be national laws. One of the things we investigate in our film, is the gun violence in Chicago, and everyone says, oh, it's because something's wrong with Chicago. Nonsense. It's because there's no national law against gun trafficking. I was in Chicago. You drive 15 minutes across the border to Indiana, you go to a gun show, you buy as many guns as you want, and you bring it back. Those are the cases where you do need national laws, but in the meantime, there is action on the state level, an increasing number of states that are doing something about, what's really a kind of insanity.
Well, the American people are way ahead of Washington on this. That is, there is no question about that. Where do we go from here? I mean, this state of terrorism, as you know, we have one presidential candidate who thinks that we should just take innocent people and shoot them. And that is Donald Trump, of course, saying that we've got to go after their families. When you see this being as coordinated as it is, when you see pipe bombs being thrown, a police chase, who knows what the motive was. But this is a crazy world we're living in right now. And the rhetoric in the political arena, your take on this, Robert, it certainly isn't. It certainly is feeding into this kind of behavior, I think.
No, there's no question about it. It makes it on some strange level for a subset of people socially acceptable. And one of the things we found in the gun culture world, Ed, is, there's a real belief that the government is coming, among a small subset, the government is coming to take away guns. Now, that's nonsense. It's paranoia, and it's fear stoked by people like Trump, by the NRA, by the gun companies. But, when you have Trump who, says more horrific things by the day in some crazy effort to keep the public attention on him, it certainly doesn't help the fact. On the other hand, it does, I hope and believe, Ed, is going to motivate more and more people. I talked to somebody in the White House last week about the gun stuff, and fairly high level, and he said they've done a lot of research and obviously a lot of thinking about this, and one of the things they found is when there's a gun tragedy, people like us and our emotions, we care very strongly. But when it's out of the headlines, a day, a week, several weeks, then our caring and intensity goes down. Mm-hmm. But the people who are committed to selling guns and making guns and protecting guns, their intensity continues for a longer period of time. And that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to keep the intensity up to protect our families. Always doing great work. Brave New Films, Robert Greenwald with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Good to have you with us, Robert. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed. Pleasure.
When we come back on Ed Schultz News and Commentary, Congressman Alan Grayson, just what does it mean when Donald Trump says we should go after the families of the terrorists? Stay with us. We're right back. Hey, folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com, www.biogreenclean, and order today. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns. It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor. They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up, and the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
Good to have you back with us here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. If Donald Trump was polling like Chris Christie, nobody would pay attention to him because what he says is so absurd. I said yesterday on this production that I do believe that there's going to be a good amount of Americans out there who are going to say, yeah, damn right, let's go after their families. But think about it. Are we going to do covert operations in foreign countries to go hijack families of terrorists so we can bring terror to their lives? What is he talking about? This is the Trumpster on Fox News.
I would knock the hell out of ISIS.
But we see that happening in
the other thing is with the terrorists, you have to take out their families. When you get these terrorists, you have to take out their families. They care about their lives. Don't kid yourself. But they say they don't care about their lives. You have to take out their families.
Let's turn now to Congressman Alan Grayson of Florida. Congressman, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Ed.
I want your reaction. I know how you feel about this fight against ISIS and what our country should be doing. But when you hear something like that, I take pause. What does it mean? Does he mean that he wants American soldiers to cut the heads off the family members? Are we going to run special ops to pick these people up and bring them to the United States? I mean, this is the first time in my life that I've ever heard a presidential hopeful admit that he's willing to commit war crimes. How else do I read it?
Oh, that's a war crime. That's exactly right. It doesn't matter what the methodology is. It doesn't matter whether he sends special ops or decides to nuke some poor corner of the earth because some terrorist happened to come from there. Whatever the methodology may be, the fact is that it's a war crime. It's a violation of the Geneva Convention and a violation of the laws of war. And we have, as you point out, a presidential hopeful actually describing the intent to commit war crimes.
He is not only a presidential hopeful, he is the leading candidate right now for the Republican Party, polling in double digits ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, and more generally what this is referred to under the laws of war is it's called collective punishment. This idea that you punish a group for the acts of an individual in the group. It has a long and sordid history. It's practiced today even in these times in North Korea and virtually nowhere else. In recent times it's practiced by the Nazis. There's an interesting story that comes out of the author of the life of the author of The Final Solution. His name was Reinhard Heydrich. He was an officer among the Nazis, a very high-level SS officer. He was assassinated by two Czech partisans. The Nazis decided to, as they often did, take collective punishment. They identified the two villages where the two partisans had come from. They killed every single person in both villages. And by the way, those weren't the right villages.
Amazing.
They killed two entire villages full of people by mistake.
What is the reaction on Capitol Hill amongst your colleagues when this is being circulated by Trump and picked up repeatedly by the media, played over and over again?
I don't think that there's a reaction among us because we don't really feel like we're direct participants. I think even on the Republican side, the sense among members of the House of Representatives and the Senate is that it's all a show that's playing out before our eyes and that we're not active participants in it. I can come on your show and I can go on other media like MSNBC and condemn this as a war crime.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that the Republican voters don't pay much attention to that kind of statement. By critics, they, as you point out, they cheer on that kind of irrational and deeply evil remark by one of their leading candidates. And it's happened more than once. I said not too long ago that for people here on Capitol Hill and around the country, it's like a reality show. The show's not called The Biggest Loser, it's called The Biggest Bigot. And the biggest bigot becomes the Republican nominee for president.
Congressman Alan Grayson with us here. And finally, Trump says that we are we're fighting a very politically correct war. Your response to that?
It's politically correct in the sense that we haven't committed any war crimes on a regular basis the way that he's described. We haven't adopted the policy of the slaughter of the innocent, something that's been condemned by civilized societies now for 3,000 years. So in that sense, I guess it's politically correct. I'm not sure I feel very guilty about that. There has been a distinction between belligerents and non-belligerents, combatants and non-combatants, that goes back to biblical times. You know, when the two sides went into war in biblical times, they didn't just go off and kill everybody who happened to be on the other side whenever they had a chance. It's hardwired into us to understand that there are belligerents and non-belligerents. The reason why ISIS is considered to be so evil, the reason why Al-Qaeda is considered to be so evil is because they don't make that distinction. And now he wants us to join them.
Congressman, finally, I'd like to get your thoughts. Obviously, another horrific shooting in this country in San Bernardino, California. But when it comes to gun violence, what is, if anything, a solution? Where does this take us? Mass shooting number 355 just in this year, 2015.
Well, there's two obvious solutions which virtually everybody agrees upon. The first is that you need to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and the mentally ill. And the second is that you need to keep weapons out of the hands of people in general if they can do a tremendous amount of damage in a short time. I mean, if not, where would this end? Would you let people have individual personal nuclear weapons? There's got to be some kind of limit that's put on people, and the limits obviously are not limiting enough. I think a rule of thumb is that if you can kill 100 people in a minute, that's probably not a good weapon to put into anybody's hands, unless you're talking about the military, of course. That's a different story. You wouldn't want those weapons in the hands of police. You wouldn't want those weapons in the hands of private citizens. It's simply a question of scaling back the amount of mayhem that any deranged individual created at any particular moment. Those two things are important. Virtually everybody agrees on them. It's a complete failure of our political system that we never see any movement on these two basic issues.
And I just have a sense that no matter what shooting takes place, when, where, how, or how many, another 14 dead in this shooting, that we're ever going to get the political will to be able to implement the changes that we need to implement in our society.
No, the answer from the other side is always simple. Just hand out more guns. If you had guns against guns, then everybody would be safe. What a ridiculous idea. But the fact is that is their ideology. That's what they believe, and they're not going to change no matter what the facts may be. They don't operate under the same principles as the rest of us because they think they know the real answer, which is just more and more and more guns, more dangerous guns in the hands of more individuals, and that is their panacea.
Congressman Alan Grayson, always good to visit. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you.
You bet. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSafe team bring you this production. We're back tomorrow.